I remember the day I stopped believing that love was something you simply stumbled into. I used to think the right person would arrive at the perfect moment, that everything would make sense instantly, and that certainty would replace every doubt I had ever carried. But life has a strange way of teaching us that the most meaningful things rarely arrive wrapped in certainty. They arrive quietly. They ask us to trust before we understand. They ask us to choose before we know the ending. If you are listening to these words, I want you to know that none of this is easy for me to say. Every sentence feels like opening another door inside myself that I kept locked for years. Not because I wanted to hide who I was, but because I was afraid someone would look inside and decide I wasn't enough. For a long time, I believed my value came from what I could accomplish. I believed that if I worked harder, achieved more, solved bigger problems, then one day I would finally deserve the kind of love I had always dreamed about. I chased success because success was measurable. You could count it. You could prove it. You could point to something you built and say, "This is why I matter." Love never worked that way. Love never asked me how many goals I achieved. It never cared about the titles beside my name or the recognition I received from strangers. Instead, it kept asking one question I wasn't prepared to answer. Who are you when nobody is applauding? That question followed me everywhere. It followed me during the quiet nights when the world went to sleep, but my thoughts refused to. It followed me after every victory that somehow felt smaller than I imagined. It followed me every time I looked around a crowded room and realized that being surrounded by people isn't the same as feeling understood. Then you appeared, not with dramatic speeches, not with impossible promises, just with a presence that somehow made everything slower. You listened in a world that only wanted to speak. You understood things I never explained. Somehow you noticed the pauses between my words more than the words themselves. Most people heard what I said. You noticed what I couldn't say. That frightened me, because once someone begins to understand you without explanation, pretending becomes impossible. I could no longer hide behind confidence, because you noticed the insecurity underneath it. I could no longer pretend I always knew what I was doing, because you saw the moments when I questioned everything. I could no longer convince myself that I didn't need anyone, because your absence started feeling louder than anyone else's presence. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever met someone whose silence somehow says more than everyone else's conversations? Someone whose smile changes your entire day without even trying? Someone who makes ordinary moments feel unforgettable? That's what happened to me. I started noticing little things that nobody else would ever think mattered. The way you paused before answering difficult questions. The way you looked at people when they were speaking, making them feel like they were the only person in the room. The way you laughed without trying to impress anyone. The way you made kindness seem effortless. None of those things would make headlines. None of those things would impress the world. But they changed mine. People often ask what makes someone fall in love. They expect an extraordinary story, a dramatic first meeting, a perfect moment, but I don't think love begins that way. I think love begins when someone consistently makes your heart feel safe enough to become honest. That is what you gave me. Honesty. Not because you demanded it, because your presence made lies feel unnecessary. And once I experienced that, there was no returning to the version of myself that believed emotional distance was strength. I realized something that completely changed my understanding of life. Strength is not refusing to need people. Strength is having the courage to admit that someone matters. That realization came with another truth I wasn't prepared for. When someone becomes important enough to change your future, they also become important enough to break your heart. That is the price nobody talks about. Everyone celebrates falling in love. Few people talk about the fear that comes with it. The fear that one misunderstanding could create distance. The fear that timing could separate two people who were meant to find each other. The fear that one moment of hesitation could become a lifetime of regret. I carried those fears every single day. Sometimes I wondered if keeping my feelings hidden would protect me. If I never admitted how deeply I cared, then maybe losing you wouldn't hurt as much. But every day I stayed silent, I realized something. Silence doesn't protect love. Silence only protects fear, and fear has never built anything beautiful. Every meaningful thing in life has always required courage. Every dream, every friendship, every family, every future worth having. Someone had to risk disappointment before something extraordinary became possible. So I made a decision. I decided I would rather be rejected for telling the truth than spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if I had been brave enough to speak. Because unanswered questions have a strange way of following us forever. They appear years later during ordinary moments. They whisper things like, what if I had called? What if I had stayed? What if I had been honest? What if they felt the same way? Those questions can become heavier than heartbreak itself. Heartbreak eventually heals. Regret often doesn't. So today I choose honesty. Not because I know how this story ends, but because I know I don't want fear writing the ending for me. There's something beautiful about choosing someone without demanding certainty in return. It means your decision isn't based on guarantees. It's based on belief. And maybe that's what love has always been, believing in a future that doesn't exist yet, believing in two imperfect people becoming stronger together, believing that patience is sometimes more powerful than perfection. I don't expect us to never disagree. I don't expect life to always be easy. I don't expect every season to feel effortless. What I hope for is something much simpler. When life becomes difficult, I hope we remember why we chose each other in the first place. Because feelings rise and fall. Circumstances change. People grow. But a decision made with honesty can survive storms that emotions alone never could. I used to think finding love meant finding someone who completed me. Now I understand something different. I wasn't incomplete before I met you. I was simply waiting to meet someone who inspired me to become a better version of the person I already was. And somehow, without trying, without asking, without even realizing it, you became that person. Then something happened that I never expected. I stopped imagining a future that revolved around achievements, and I started imagining a future built around moments. Not the moments the world celebrates, but the ones nobody else ever sees. The quiet mornings where the only sound is laughter over a cup of coffee. The late-night conversations where nothing extraordinary is happening, yet somehow they become the memories we carry forever. The ordinary days that slowly become the foundation of an extraordinary life. That is when I understood that happiness isn't created by grand events. It is built through thousands of small choices made over and over again. Choosing patience when frustration feels easier. Choosing forgiveness when pride tells you to walk away. Choosing understanding even when you don't fully agree. I never wanted a relationship that looked perfect from the outside. I wanted one that felt real from the inside, a place where neither of us had to pretend, a place where we could admit when we were tired, uncertain, or afraid without worrying that honesty would push the other person away, because I have learned something about people. We spend so much time trying to appear strong that we forget vulnerability is often what creates the deepest connection. Anyone can love the polished version of you. The difficult part is loving the version that is still healing. I hope you understand that when I think about us, I don't imagine perfection. I imagine growth. I imagine us making mistakes and learning from them. I imagine us disagreeing without making each other enemies. I imagine us choosing conversation instead of silence. I imagine us remembering that winning an argument is never more important than protecting a relationship. The older I become, the more I realize that love is less about finding the right words and more about showing up when words are no longer enough. There will be days when life feels heavy, days when work demands everything, days when disappointment visits without warning. Days when one of us feels like giving up. Those are the days that matter most. Because anyone can stay when everything feels easy. Character is revealed when staying becomes difficult. I often ask myself what kind of husband I hope to become one day. Not someone admired by strangers, but someone trusted by one person. Someone whose promises become actions. Someone whose presence brings peace instead of uncertainty. I don't want you to wonder whether you're enough. I don't want you to question whether you matter. I don't want you to carry the weight of proving your worth every single day. I want you to know that love should never feel like an endless audition. When someone chooses you, they should keep choosing you, again and again and again. Not because life is always exciting, but because commitment becomes stronger than temporary emotion. I know there will be seasons when excitement fades. Every relationship experiences them, but what replaces excitement is far more valuable. Trust is built one ordinary day at a time. It grows through consistency. Through honesty, through keeping the promises nobody else notices, the promise to listen, the promise to stay respectful even during disagreement, the promise to protect each other's hearts instead of winning every battle. People often search for butterflies. I think peace is far more valuable. Butterflies eventually settle, peace stays. And whenever I picture the future, I don't picture endless excitement. I picture peace. Coming home after a long day and knowing someone is genuinely happy to see me. Looking across a room and exchanging a smile that says more than words ever could. Growing older without feeling like we're growing apart. Watching time leave lines on our faces while leaving gratitude inside our hearts. That is the future I hope for. Not because it sounds romantic, because it sounds real. I've realized that the greatest gift two people can give each other is not perfection. It is emotional safety. A place where both people can tell the truth without fear. A place where mistakes become conversations instead of endings. A place where love becomes a refuge instead of another battlefield. Maybe that's why my heart kept returning to you. Not because you promised me a perfect life, but because whenever I imagined life's difficult moments, you were the person I wanted beside me. Success means little if there's nobody to celebrate with failure becomes easier. When someone reminds you that one difficult season doesn't define your entire story, you became that reminder. You reminded me that my value isn't measured by achievements alone. You reminded me that slowing down isn't weakness. You reminded me that being understood is one of life's rarest gifts, and perhaps that's why I stopped asking whether love was worth the risk. Instead, I began asking a different question. What kind of life would I create if I allowed fear to make every important decision? The answer frightened me. It would be a safe life, a predictable life, a comfortable life, but it wouldn't be a meaningful one, because meaning has always lived on the other side of courage. Every unforgettable story begins with someone taking a step they couldn't guarantee would succeed. Every lifelong friendship begins with someone saying hello. Every family begins with two people deciding to believe in tomorrow. Maybe love works the same way. Maybe it has never been about certainty. Maybe it has always been about faith. Faith that two imperfect hearts can build something stronger than either one could build alone. Faith that patience can outlast temporary frustration. Faith that kindness still matters in a world that often rewards selfishness. And if there's one promise I hope I never break, it's this. No matter how busy life becomes, no matter how much success or failure finds us, I never want you to question whether you are still my choice. Because love isn't proven once, it's proven repeatedly. Every ordinary day, every difficult conversation, every unexpected challenge, every new season. I choose you not because life is easy with you, but because life feels meaningful beside you. And if years from now someone asks me what the greatest decision of my life was, I don't think I'll talk about business accomplishments or opportunities. I'll remember the moment I stopped letting fear decide my future. I'll remember the moment I chose honesty over silence. I'll remember the moment I realized that some people don't simply enter your story. They become the reason you write a better one. There is another truth I have never been brave enough to say out loud. It isn't because I wanted to hide it from you. It is because saying it makes everything irreversible. Once words leave your heart, they no longer belong only to you. They become part of someone else's story, and that is both beautiful and terrifying. I used to believe that love was about finding someone who made life easier. Now I understand that love is about finding someone who makes life worth facing, even when it becomes difficult. There is a difference between comfort and purpose. Comfort disappears the moment circumstances change. Purpose stays, even when everything around you feels uncertain. When I think about you, I don't think about perfect sunsets or movie-like moments. I think about the ordinary Tuesday afternoons. I think about grocery shopping together. I think about driving with no destination, simply enjoying the silence between us, because silence with the right person never feels empty. I think about building traditions that nobody else understands, inside jokes that make us laugh years later, memories so small that the world would overlook them, yet so meaningful that they become impossible for us to forget. That is the kind of future I dream about. People often chase extraordinary lives while overlooking extraordinary relationships. They spend years searching for excitement, never realizing that peace is the rarest gift another human being can offer. Excitement fades, beauty changes, circumstances shift. But peace grows more valuable every single year. You became my definition of peace, not because you solved every problem, not because you removed every fear, but because somehow, standing beside you made the future feel less frightening. Before you, I thought I had to carry every burden by myself. I believed asking for help was weakness. I believed depending on someone meant losing control. Then I met you, and for the first time, I understood that sharing a burden doesn't make it heavier. It makes it lighter. That realization changed me more than I can explain. Have you ever noticed how life teaches us to protect everything except the things that matter most? We insure our homes, we protect our savings, we secure our careers, yet nobody teaches us how to protect trust once we finally find it. Trust is fragile. It isn't destroyed all at once. It disappears through little moments of neglect. Promises forgotten, words left unsaid, apologies delayed, assumptions made instead of conversations. That is why I promised myself something long before I ever had the courage to tell you how I felt. If I was ever lucky enough to find someone who truly understood me, I would never stop choosing honesty, even when honesty became uncomfortable. Because uncomfortable conversations save relationships, avoided conversations destroy them. I don't want us to become strangers living beside each other. I don't want us to smile in public while carrying silence at home. I don't want pride to become louder than love. If something hurts, I want us to talk. If something scares us, I want us to face it together. If life changes our plans, I want us to remember that we were never building a schedule. We were building a life. And lives are meant to adapt. The truth is, I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I don't know what challenges we'll face. I don't know how many unexpected turns life has waiting for us. But I do know one thing. Every version of tomorrow becomes easier when I imagine walking into it with you. That isn't because you're perfect. It's because you've become the person I trust most. Trust is a strange thing. It cannot be bought. It cannot be demanded. It cannot be rushed. It is earned slowly, one decision at a time, one truthful conversation, one kept promise, one act of kindness, one moment of choosing each other when nobody else is watching. Those moments seem small, but they become the foundation of everything. I've seen buildings collapse because their foundations were weak. Relationships aren't any different. The strongest love stories aren't built on endless romance. They're built on daily consistency. Choosing respect when frustration would be easier. Choosing patience when emotions are high. Choosing forgiveness before resentment has the chance to grow. That is the love I want, not one that impresses strangers. One that survives reality, because reality isn't always beautiful. There will be mornings when we're exhausted. There will be seasons when life asks more from us than we think we can give. There will be moments when we misunderstand each other. Moments when we wonder if we're doing enough. Moments when fear whispers that giving up would be easier. When those moments come, I hope we remember this. Love isn't proven by never falling. It's proven by always reaching back for each other's hand after we do. I think that's what forever really means, not never making mistakes. Never stopping the effort to repair them. You taught me that love isn't about finding someone who never disappoints you. It's about finding someone who cares enough to make things right. Someone who doesn't disappear when conversations become difficult. Someone who chooses understanding over winning. Someone who protects the relationship instead of protecting their ego. And every day I spend thinking about you, I become more convinced that the greatest blessing in life isn't finding someone extraordinary. It's finding someone who makes ordinary life feel extraordinary. Someone whose presence turns a house into a home. Someone whose voice becomes the calm after every storm. Someone whose hand reminds you that no matter how uncertain the road becomes, you are no longer walking it alone. That is what you became for me. Not a dream, not an illusion, not an impossible fantasy. A reason to believe that the future could be gentler than the past. A reminder that hearts can heal. A reminder that hope is stronger than fear. A reminder that sometimes, after all the waiting, after all the disappointment, after all the questions we carry through life, we finally meet the person who doesn't just change our plans, they change our understanding of love itself. And when that happens, you stop asking whether love is worth the risk. You begin asking a different question. How can I spend the rest of my life making sure this person never doubts how deeply they are loved? Sometimes I wonder if life gives us only a handful of moments that truly define who we become. Not the moments everyone celebrates, not the milestones that earn applause. I'm talking about the quiet decisions nobody else ever sees. The decision to stay when leaving would be easier. The decision to forgive when holding on to resentment feels justified. The decision to love even after your heart has learned what disappointment feels like. Those are the moments that shape a life. And somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, you became one of those defining moments for me. Before you, I thought I understood what it meant to have direction. I had plans. I had goals. I knew exactly where I wanted my career to go, what I wanted to build, what kind of future I wanted to create. Every decision was logical. Every step had a purpose. Every risk was calculated. Then you arrived, and suddenly the future wasn't just about where I was going. It became about who I wanted beside me when I finally got there. That changed everything, because reaching a destination means very little if the person you dreamed of sharing it with isn't standing there beside you. Sis is loud. Love is quiet. Sis asks, "What have you accomplished?" Love asks, "Who did you become while accomplishing it?" For years, I answered the first question. You made me answer the second. And I have to admit something. There were nights when I questioned whether I deserved someone like you. Not because you made me feel small. You never did. You made me feel seen. And somehow, being truly seen is far more intimidating than being admired. Admiration only notices your strengths. Understanding notices your fears. It notices the parts of you that still carry old disappointments. It notices the dreams you've stopped talking about because you're afraid they won't come true. It notices the smile that hides exhaustion. You noticed all of it, and instead of walking away, you stayed. That is something I will never take for granted. Do you know what I think the rarest kind of love is? It isn't passionate love. It isn't dramatic love. It isn't the kind of love people write headlines about. It's steady love. The kind that quietly says, "I'm still here." The kind that doesn't disappear after an argument. The kind that doesn't run when life becomes inconvenient. The kind that keeps showing up, even on ordinary days when nothing exciting is happening. Because ordinary days make up most of our lives. Anyone can create magic for one evening. The real miracle is creating peace for a lifetime. That is the future I imagine with you. Not constant excitement, constant trust, not endless perfection. Endless effort, not pretending we'll never struggle. Knowing we'll struggle together. I think that's the promise people often forget to make. Everyone promises forever. Few people promise patience. Everyone promises happiness. Few people promise understanding. Everyone promises love. Few people promise consistency. If I could make only one promise to you, it wouldn't be that life will always be beautiful. I can't promise that. There will be seasons neither of us expects. There will be disappointments we never planned for. There will be days when we feel overwhelmed by responsibilities. Days when we don't have the perfect words. Days when we're tired. Days when we're uncertain, but I can promise this. You will never have to face those days wondering whether you're facing them alone. Because choosing someone doesn't mean standing beside them only when the sun is shining. It means becoming their shelter when the storm arrives. That is the kind of man I want to become. Not the man who impresses the world. The man who protects one heart with everything he has. I've realized that love isn't measured by the gifts we buy or the speeches we give. It's measured by presence. Who answers the phone late at night? Who notices when your smile isn't genuine? Who remembers the little things everyone else forgets? Who stays long after the excitement fades? That is love. Get after consistent. And the older I become, the more convinced I am that consistency is one of the most romantic things another person can offer. Because consistency says something words never can. It says, you can depend on me. Those 6 words carry more power than 1,000 beautiful promises. I want to become someone whose actions make those words believable. Someone whose love feels safe. Someone whose loyalty isn't questioned. Someone whose honesty never leaves room for doubt. Because trust is built slowly, one truthful conversation at a time, one fulfilled promise at a time, one ordinary day at a time. I don't want us to spend our lives chasing perfection. I want us to spend our lives protecting what we've built, protecting our conversations, protecting our respect, protecting our friendship, because I truly believe the strongest marriages begin with the strongest friendships. Friendship lasts when excitement changes. Friendship listens before judging. Friendship chooses compassion over pride. And when love is built on friendship, even difficult seasons become opportunities to grow instead of reasons to leave. You have changed the way I think about forever. Forever no longer feels like an impossible amount of time. It feels like millions of ordinary moments shared with the right person, millions of mornings, millions of conversations, millions of chances to say, I'm still choosing you. Maybe that is what love has been trying to teach me all along. Not that one perfect moment changes everything, but that thousands of faithful moments slowly create a beautiful life. And if one day we're old, sitting together with gray hair and slower steps, I hope we won't remember every challenge we faced. I hope we'll remember how many times we refused to let those challenges separate us. Because in the end, I don't believe people remember perfect days. I believe they remember faithful hearts. They remember the person who stayed, the person who listened, the person who believed in them when they struggled to believe in themselves. If I can become that person for you, then every fear I've faced, every risk I've taken, and every vulnerable word I've spoken will have been worth it. Because at the end of this journey, I don't want to look back and remember everything I built. I want to look back and remember the life we built together. If you've stayed with me until this moment, then maybe these words found you for a reason. Maybe you've loved someone in silence. Maybe you've been afraid to say what your heart has been carrying. Or maybe you're still waiting for the person who will one day make all of this make sense. Wherever you are, I hope you never let fear become louder than love. I hope you never convince yourself that the right moment will always come tomorrow, because tomorrow is a promise none of us have been given. The people who change our lives rarely ask for perfection. They ask for honesty. They ask for courage. They ask for the version of us that is willing to be seen without pretending. If you are the woman these words were always meant to reach, then I hope you know this. I would choose you again. Not because life would always be easy. Not because we would never make mistakes. But because every future I imagine becomes more meaningful when you're part of it. You are not just someone I fell in love with. You are the person who reminded me that love is not about finding perfection. It's about finding someone worth growing with every single day. So if you're listening right now, don't leave the important words unsaid. Tell the people you love that they matter. Hold them a little closer, forgive a little faster, be patient a little longer. Because one day, we'll all look back and realize that the greatest moments of our lives were never about what we owned or achieved. They were about who stood beside us through every season, and if somehow our paths were always meant to cross, then I believe this is only the beginning of our story. Until that day comes, I'll keep believing in love, keep becoming a better man, and keep saving a place in my heart for the person I hope will one day call it home. Thank you for spending these moments with me. If these words touched your heart, subscribe and become part of this journey. Leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from, because I'd love to know where in the world this message found you. And remember this before you go. The greatest love stories are not written by perfect people. They are written by two imperfect hearts that choose each other, over and over again, every single day. Until we meet again, take care of your heart, never stop believing in real love, and never be afraid to choose the person who makes your soul feel like home.